This 2024 NFC West season-long player props edition of the Propcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code MACHINE. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm's college football and NFL picks and projections are now live. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM.
With the touchdown. And taking a shot to ground downfield. He makes the catch, and he gets in for the touchdown. The catch is made by Calvin Ridley. Wilson, as he throws deep downfield. It's going to be...
Welcome, everyone, to the Propcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Thursday, August the 8th. Here to get into our next division for our player props. That is going to be the NFC West. We did the AFC West as the first of our season player props. So go ahead and check that one out if you haven't done so already. And this will be our second of our 8 division previews for our season player props. So definitely excited to get into the NFC West here. A lot of intriguing storylines, as every division does have. We'll talk about that at the top of the show as well. And you guys know how we do it here. We'll give you a quarterback prop if we have one, and then we'll mix it, of course, skill position player props here. And then we'll wrap it up with a best bet for this division as well. But joining me, as usual, to help me break everything down happening on the gridiron, got my guy here with me. It's ChrisBeCappinn. Chris, how you doing, my man? How you doing this Thursday afternoon?
What's up? I'm excited to be here as always, man. We slowly but surely getting through these divisional previews. I'm excited to jump into another one, man. Jump into another one as we both are kind of glaring at France versus Germany as well on the basketball side of things.
Yeah, we were talking offline. I was like, man, maybe this was not the best time for us to get recorded or record this episode, just because this game, I feel like, is going to come down to the wire. And I know it's still midway, about third quarter right now, but we're going to do our best to keep our eyes and focus on the NFC West division here. But this is going to be a really good game come down to the wire between France and Germany, at least on the hardwood. So, yeah, look, NFC West, I know when we talked about AFC West, Chris, that it was a conversation of the quarterbacks, right, in that division, because there was a lot of unknown, right? We talked about the Raiders. We talked about Justin Herbert with the injury. And then we also talked about Denver, where we were recording that show. We weren't sure who was going to be the starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos. And we still don't know when it comes to week 1 here. But I think there's obviously more answers here as far as the quarterback position does go here in the NFC West. Obviously, Brock Purdy will be there for the Niners. We know Geno Smith, we'll touch on the injury here in a minute that, he's dealing with. I know most of his numbers are off the board right now. Kyler Murray is going to be full go this season after coming off that torn ACL 2 seasons ago. And I think about Kyler Murray, the one advantage I feel like he does have coming into this season, Chris, is that he was able to return for 8 games last year for this Arizona Cardinals team and get that rust off and kind of get back to the speed after, tearing his ACL. And sometimes when you're coming off of that type of injury and you haven't had any meaningful, games, it's kind of still in the back of your mind. Maybe you're a little tentative, about that injury. Maybe, you second guess taking off and scrambling again. But I think with Kyler Murray being a scrambling quarterback, I think that may be something in the past. And this offseason and training camp and OTAs and preseason, if he does end up playing that, he can just focus on playing football. He doesn't have to worry about rehab or rest and things like that. It's just about going out there and playing football. And then Matthew Stafford, of course, another year with the Los Angeles Rams there, Aaron Donald retiring. So we'll see how that affects this NFC West division, and in particular the Los Angeles Rams here, Chris. But, when we were digging into this division, anything that stood out to you from maybe, an overall perspective or kind of zooming out and looking at this division that kind of stood out to you?
I think is what you mentioned with Kyler Murray that really stood out initially. I think, coming back, like you said, I think that's a big advantage that he has, having those 8 games coming back off injury. and he got one of those brand new shiny toys. You know, we talk about him a lot, which pretty sure we'll talk about him a little bit more. I know I will talk about him a little bit more when we get into the player props. The Rams started off the season really, poor last season. It took Sean McVay and that offense a while to kind of get acclimated to what they needed to do. I think it was a much more balanced play call for them. And then we see the Rams go, they finished 7-1, I think it was, to end up, making the playoffs, which, was something that we didn't, foresee at the given time. Of course, losing Aaron Donald and that defense, I think they're the cheapest defense in the NFL this season, as far as being paid, because, Matthew Stafford, demands so much money. You got Puka Nacua over there with Cooper Kupp, and that offense just takes up so much of the salary cap that, defensively, I think they'll be playing from behind a lot, this season as well, because I don't think the defense is going to be really good unless a lot of those projected, first, second, third round picks on the defensive end come to really play football. And then for San Francisco, we still don't know where Brandon Ayuk is going to play football, but that is also going to be interesting. Does Brock Purdy have another season where he throws for 30 touchdowns? How effective is Deebo Samuel? Can he stay healthy for a full year? George Kittle, it's a bunch of question marks for San Francisco that, especially with them not getting over the hump last year, everything running through Arrowhead. And Seattle's always pretty fascinating as well, because Geno, they wrote him off and he didn't write back. Had a really good season. I see some of his projections the numbers are a tad bit lower than the numbers that he put up last season. So it's going to be interesting to see, how the Seattle team, what identity they take shape of, especially with a new head coach there. That's going to be interesting. New offensive coordinator coming over. So I'm excited to break down the division and see this division, how things kind of play out.
Yeah, 100%. I think the landscape may have changed a little bit for this division. I think in particular, like you mentioned, for the San Francisco 49ers. And, there's been a lot of grief given to the 49ers because they haven't been able to get over the hump. But unfortunately for them, in the 2 Super Bowls where they did get there, they had to play against the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously with Patrick Mahomes, I think I mentioned this in the last pod, that's for some people maybe already the greatest quarterback of all time. I know Tom Brady has a lot to say about that, and I still think it's still Tom Brady for me. But I think, when we talk about it at the end of the day, Chris, when you and I are old and fat and sitting on the porch, maybe, talking about football, that we'll say that Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes are probably 1 and 1A. When it comes to talking about, the greatest of all time, at least for us at quarterback position. So, I think we'll talk more about as a conversation goes on here, we get into our player props here, more about this division here as well. But I think we did a great job of touching on at least the injuries and some of the things that, we're looking at as far as this division goes. Anything else you want to mention before we get into the division here?
No, just to your point, that you made about Patrick Mahomes and the San Francisco 49ers being able to get over the hump, man. If you ask Charles Barkley and John Stockton and Karl Malone about those days against Jordan, they'll have similar sentiments. So, definitely, one of the all-time greats that we're seeing, within our eyes. But I'm with you. I think, we have to kind of see how things kind of play out, even though what he has done so far, is second to none. And I think if they win this year, if it'll be the first time that any team has won 3 straight Super Bowls, is that correct? Or
so I think I want to say the Cowboys have done it. We can quickly take a look here in the NFL. 3-peat NFL Super Bowl champions. Let's see. So prior to the Chiefs, 8 teams have won back-to-back titles, but none of them were able to do. Okay, so there has been 3 straight titles. So you have to go all the way back to 1929 to 1931, and then 1965 to 1967, where the Packers won 3 straight titles in that span. So since 1967, you're correct, Chris, that no team has ever won 3 consecutive Super Bowls in at least a modern day. So we'll see if the Chiefs are able to do it. I think we talked about this when we talked about Travis Kelce, that I felt like that if the Chiefs do win it this year, that I think that might be time for him to possibly ride off into the sunset with his brother Jason Kelce retiring there as well. So yeah, it's always an intriguing conversation when you talk about not only the greatest of all time at the quarterback position, but on the brink of history as well. So I think that's something definitely that Patrick Mahomes would to add to his resume, as well as the Kansas City Chiefs organization. All right, Chris, before we do get into it here, my man, let me let everybody know about the 32-team previews that the Sports Gambling Podcast has launched with Sean and Ryan. As a bonus, each team preview will include a code word. Submit the 32 code word phrase, and you could win. And you could be the lucky winner who gets a $500 NFL Circa Future Bet. Subscribe wherever you do get your podcast, and also don't forget about the SGPN app. All right, Chris, let's get into it here. Player prop number 1 for season long for the NFC West. Where are you taking us?
So we started the quarterback position, and we'll go straight to Seattle here. You know, I'm looking at this Seattle team, and I'm going to go Geno Smith. I'm going to go under on his passing yards. Number sitting at 34.75. Definitely shop around because I see, you know, everything from as low as 34.50 all the way up to 34.75. So about 25-yard difference there. But if you want the over, you definitely want to, you know, get the lowest number as we talked about in the previous pods. And if you want the under, you definitely want to get there, you know, with the highest number as well. So looking at Geno last year, you know, he was, you know, he had the really, really good season. And then last year, he kind of took a step back. I think, you know, going through last year, he ended up with 10 less touchdowns, 600, almost 600 less yards as well. And with a new coach, we talked about this, you know, they have a lot of turnover just in general. Pete Carroll no longer being there. He does have, I mean, I think the depth chart is, you know, pretty much the same, but I think the biggest thing, another one of the biggest things that stick out to me, you know, is just the offensive line. This offensive line is rated as the 3rd worst offensive line in football. I think that the defense is going to be pretty good, although they also have a new defensive coordinator as well. This is a team that has a lot of turnover. Head coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator. I think the game plan will be to, you know, utilize the running backs a little bit more. It's not like that, you know, that on the depth chart that these guys aren't great running backs. You know, you got Kenneth Walker there who played really, really well for them as well. Charbonnet played really, really well for them as well last season. And it's not to say that DK is not going to have a great season, and Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, how do you pronounce it last name? You know,
Jackson Smith and Njigba.
And Jigba, that I was gonna butcher that. But him as well. I think those guys, you know, can all have, you know, pretty productive seasons, and he can still stay under this 35, you know, pretty much 35 and 3,500 yard number. So for all of those reasons, strength of schedule also pretty difficult. I mean, they got games against some really good pass defenses. You look at the Detroit Lions, the San Francisco 49ers, the Buffalo Bills, the San Francisco 49ers again, because it's a divisional game. So I think, you know, all in all, Geno, it's a more balanced attack. We'll have to see what, you know, coaching staff and offensive coordinator game plan will be. But I think we see Geno just struggle just a tad bit more, you know, to get some of those passing yards that he, you know, was accustomed to 2 years ago. So last year was a year that Geno did go under this number as well. So, he went over last year, 36.24. But I project Geno to pass about 3,300 yards this year. You know, I'm comfortable taking the over here. I'm taking the under here at under 34.75.
Yeah, last year I did have the under for Geno, and it was at 3,900 and a half passing yards. And yeah, he did miss 2 games last year. But also to add into the fact that he's already dealing with an injury going into training camp here and possibly to start the season here. And they have, I guess you could say, a pretty good or maybe an average insurance policy behind him in Sam Howell. I know you're very familiar with him with his time with Washington there, but
average at best, you know.
Yeah, average. I mean, yeah, average. And I think that's what you can really expect out of a backup quarterback, right? And I think that, and I'm not saying that, okay, they're going to bench him for Sam Howell because they just paid, you know, Smith, you know, all this money, but you know, he's dealing with already a knee and hip injury. And if that's something that lingers throughout the preseason and going into week 1, that's something that can obviously, you know, affect his play. And I think that what you also mentioned is really key there, that it's a brand new coach for the Seattle Seahawks, right? It's Mike McDonald that came over as the head coach of this team, a defensive-minded head coach. He was the Baltimore DC prior to prior to this, from last year, they also brought in Ryan Grubb, who was the University of Washington with Michael Penix Jr., the offensive coordinator there. So it's a brand new regime, right? And like you mentioned, they also do play a 7 teams that are top 10 in pass defense as well. So I think that maybe you see a little bit more reliance on the running game as well with Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet and those guys. I know they have one of the better wide receiving groups, like you mentioned, with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. But, again, we talked about that. It just maybe takes 1 or 2 games for him to miss and for you to cash this under here. So, yeah, I was there with them last year. I think you got to continue fading Geno Smith as well for this upcoming season, especially like we mentioned with a brand new coaching regime there in Seattle in the post Pete Carroll era. I also took a under here on a quarterback here in this division, Chris, and it was between 2 quarterbacks. It was either going to be Brock Purdy or it was going to be Matthew Stafford. And I think I think both do go under. I'm going to go with Matthew Stafford on the under there. So you take a look at the construction of this Los Angeles Rams roster, and when we talked about at the top of the show some of the quarterbacks in this division with Matthew Stafford, Kyler Murray, and so on, you mentioned that we should expect to see a more balanced attack from the Los Angeles Rams, and I think that's what's going to be key here for me. So the number right now for Matthew Stafford is at 3,900.5 passing yards. I'm going to go with the under on that. So Kyren Williams last year was absolutely phenomenal in the games that he did play. But let's not forget, Chris, they also drafted Blake Corum out of Michigan, who was absolutely a stud last year for that team that won the national championship. So I think you're going to see more of a balanced attack here for this Los Angeles team. And again, there's always the fact that Matthew Stafford is, getting up there in age. And again, there may be a week or 2 that he may miss just for him to rest or in the playoff. You don't want to be forcing Matthew Stafford out there because you want him to be there as your starting quarterback for this team. So I say all that. I think that we'll see a more balanced attack for this Los Angeles Rams team. Matthew Stafford, I think this number is a little bit high for him. And I know, he's done it throughout his career. There's no question about that. I'm not taking that away from him. But I think it's more of the fact we'll see a more balanced attack. And I think that as the season progresses for the Rams and Matthew Stafford, that you want to keep him as healthy as you can. And how do you do that? You rely more on the running game. Maybe you'll see a little bit more of Blake Corum. Maybe you'll see a little bit more of Kyren Williams. And maybe it is a more of a team that relies on the running game, because you mentioned this defense is going to take a step back, right? Because they won't no longer have Aaron Donald. So how do you keep the other offense off the field? Let's run the ball. Let's eat up some clock. And I think Sean McVay is an absolute genius when it does come to, offensive game planning and just game planning overall. So I say all that to be on the under for Matthew Stafford, 3,900.5 passing yards here, Chris.
Love it. I was actually considering this one as well. I'm going to go ahead and add it just because you just kind of verified everything that I was thinking as well. Another part of it, just to add, is I talked about, them starting 3-6, and they were kind of banged up, and Stafford was severely underperforming, and Cooper Kupp was, injured, which there is some injury lingering in that wide receiver group as well. I know that they, have a bunch of playmakers, but, there's some injury within their wide receiver room and the tight end room as well. The thing that I wanted to mention, is when they went on that 7-1 run, with the only game that, they lost being to Baltimore, it was, a lot of reduced target depth, which means that, that Stafford wasn't throwing the ball as deep, especially on first down. It was increased running back target rate, and it was less shotgun and more play action. They became so predictable, just because we know Stafford is such a gunslinger. But the way that they were successful last season throughout those last 8 games really came with, like I said, those, less shotgun, more versatility from the running back, a lot more play actions, and the passes weren't as deep. So I love them. If I see a under 4,000 right on the nose at plus 100 over on BetMGM, I'll get down there with you on this one.
All right. I mean, look, if you see a 4,000, then that's even better, right? So I'll make it official. The under 4,500 for Matthew Stafford, currently over on BetMGM. All right, before we get into some more player props here for the NFC West for the upcoming season, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy just launched Underdog Streaks. Hit your first 2 picks and go streaking. If you can get a 11-0 run, you can win 1,000 extra entry. Plus, Best Ball Mania is live with 15 million in prizes. They just added another college football contest for Best Ball, and you can now use specials and boost on all flex entries. So sign up with promo code MACHINE to claim your special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Make sure you use that promo code MACHINE. And we're also brought to you by Game Time. Hey, look, we're getting to that part of the year that maybe you want to get out to the ballpark for baseball as the season is winding down. And it's hard to find tickets because sometimes that ticket buying experience, it could be frustrating, right? Because there's a lot of times you're looking through tickets and you're trying to buy them and poof, somebody else buys them and you're not able to get to them. Or you get to the end of the page and you'll see that that ticket price ended up being double because of all the fees that do add up. That's where Game Time comes in. And guess what? Game Time is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down closer to when it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in price views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. So if you want to get out to the ballpark or any other big events that are happening in your area, maybe it's not sports, right? Maybe there's a comedy show that's in your area, theater, whatever the case might be, let Game Time help you out because, again, like I mentioned, they have a lot of great last-minute ticket available, flash deals, zone deals as well. And it's easy to find and buy MLB tickets or, like I mentioned, for every kind of event in your area. Last-minute deals, save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and much more. They also have all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront, like I mentioned, with no surprise fees at checkout. The lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. That's how confident they are in their prices. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code SGPN for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account and redeem code SGPN for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, Chris, let's keep it rolling here, my man. Take us over to your next player prop for the NFC West division. What do you got?
So you threw me to Ali. I'm gonna go ahead and dunk the oop. Hopefully, we're going Karen Williams over his 8.5 touchdowns here. This is the perfect. I mean, you lay out the perfect segue, and like I said, I agree with the Stafford under his 4,500 passing yards. Karen Williams is somebody who I had to do a little bit of a double take, and I caution myself, because I know that you are 33-5 on under on player props, and most of those are unders over the last few years. But this number just really stood out to me. I mean, this guy, is somebody who had 12 touchdowns in 12 games last season, and I see the number. I don't need him to get 12. I don't need him to get 11. I just need him to get 9. Yep. Juice, not a lot of juice. It comes in officially at -108 on FanDuel is the best number that I found. So there's what we talked about, which I'll reiterate in a second, but there's also injuries to either one of these top tier wide receivers gets, Karen Williams a lot more touches here. This is only his 3rd year, so I'm pretty sure they're going to utilize him a lot more. You got Puka Nicole on one side, you got Cooper Kupp on the other side, but which one of those guys, if it's one of them, help me out here. I didn't write it down in my notes, but it's one of those guys is already injured and already kind of going through it. Yeah, for the Rams.
A receiver or a running back?
So it's a receiver. It's either Puka or
it is Puka. And I'll get to that in a minute, but it is Puka that's injured.
Yeah. So I the injury to either one of those guys, and hopefully that doesn't derail his regular season, because he had absolute outstanding off the charts type of season last season. But I love Karen Williams here, and I think the number's too low. I'm expecting Sean McVay to be a little more unpredictable with their play calling, and just to mix it up a little bit more, having a more balanced attack between rushing and passing to help out a 35-year-old Matthew Stafford here. If I talked about it already, but the last thing that I wanted to mention was like I mentioned that the things that were successful for them. I mentioned them closing the season off 7-1, and like I said, a lot of that, if you go back and look through the numbers, it was reduced target depth. It was, and especially on first down, it was increased running back targets, handing the ball off, check downs, less shotgun and more type play action, more motion in general, and increased target rate out of the routes as well. So all of those things, I like his yards as well, but I do think, like I said, there'll have to be a balanced attack, in order for this team to be successful. And that's what it took last season. And I don't think that that's going to change too much this season. Now here's the last part I want to mention. The Rams actually hired John Stretchen, I think it's Stretchener. I think you pronounce his name. If he comes over from Tennessee Titans, they hired this guy as a game manager because Sean McVay can be a little pass heavy, So I think, just having that extra voice, there as well, is going to help this team with play, with decision making, especially on third down, on fourth down. And I think we'll get more, like I said, I think all of that will lead to a much more balanced attack. And we'll see Karen Williams have a pretty big season. As long as he can stay, he did miss a couple games last year because of injury. But as long as he can stay healthy, I do see him getting, potentially double-digit touchdowns here. I'll take the 8.5 over here.
Yeah, look, Kyren Williams last year played in 12 games, and he had 12 total touchdowns. So I think there was only 3 games where he didn't score a touchdown for the Los Angeles Rams. And I think when you talk about this, and something that we keep harping on is balanced attack. And I think that, again, with Matthew Stafford getting up there in age, with I think they drafted, again, Blake Corum as well for a reason. But I think when it does come down to that red zone and scoring touchdowns, I think Kyren Williams is going to be that guy for this Los Angeles Rams team. So yeah, I'm 100% with you. I think that, again, if anybody's going to benefit, obviously, with taking the under with Matthew Stafford, it's obviously going to be the running game for the Los Angeles Rams. So definitely can get behind Kyren Williams for his touchdowns. And again, I've seen a lot of times where Matthew Stafford is in that red zone or within the 15 or 10 yard line that he does make mistakes there and, throws picks. Well, what better way than just to hand the ball off to Kyren Williams and let him, get into the end zone using his legs and his muscle there. So yeah, definitely can get behind Kyren Williams on his touchdowns here. So I didn't anticipate, Chris, this turning into a Los Angeles Rams podcast, but you mentioned Puka Nacua, and I'm going to take the under on his receptions, and that's at 85.5 for this upcoming season. So a couple things here. Obviously, last year, Puka Nacua had an absolutely outstanding year, right? Rookie of the year caliber numbers that he did put up. 160 targets last year. He played in all 17 games, had 105 receptions, finished close to 1,500 receiving yards, finished exactly with 1,486, had 6 touchdowns in there as well. But you take a look at number one, where we talk about everything that we just mentioned with the running game and Matthew Stafford, where I think that for Puka Nacua, exceeding expectations last year for this team. And a lot of that had to do with Cooper Kupp not being healthy. I think that's been the case for him over the last 2 seasons for Cooper Kupp. So, number one, I do anticipate a healthier Cooper Kupp this year. And we know that Cooper Kupp has been Matthew Stafford's guy ever since that Matthew Stafford got there for this Los Angeles Rams team. So that's number one, right? Last year, Puka Nacua was the only receiver that played all 17 games last year. You had Tutu Atwell and DeMarcus Robinson, who played 16. Cooper Kupp, like I mentioned, only played 12 games last year. And then Tyler Higbee, their tight end, played 15 games last year as well. So I'm expecting a bit of a step back here for Puka Nacua. And also to the fact that Cooper Kupp is going to be healthier. Hopefully this season he gets back to having that production that he had before even Puka Nacua got there, and when they were, making that run for the Super Bowl in the prior years there as well. So I thought 85.5 was a big number, and I did expect, him to have a bit of a regression here. And also we talked about the injury, right? I know Sean McVay came out and said all the right things about Puka Nacua, and that, he should be ready for week 1 against Detroit Lions. I think the exact quote was that he expects, Nacua to be ready, that there's no any structural damage or anything like that. But again, when we talk about these knee injuries, there's something that can be really, really tricky for these guys. So he's still considered week to week with the knee injury as far as practice goes right now for this team. Adam Schefter also tweeted out that Rams head coach, and I'll read the exact quote here. Rams head coach Sean McVay on a wide receiver Puka Nacua's knee injury. It's just going to be, quote, it's just going to be week to week with him. Nothing serious or nothing structural. He'll be good. He'll be in good shape. He'll recover and we'll be ready to go. No threat against week one against the Lions. But I'm still a little pessimistic when it does come to knee injuries. And again, if he's not practicing or going to be playing in preseason with an injury, that it's still going to take him time to get up to game speed. And Chris, what you mentioned last year, that it took a little bit for this Rams offense to get going. But when we see a lot of these players that don't play in preseason, more so if it's a quarterback or whether it's a wide receiver, it's going to take him maybe a couple weeks to get up to game speed and get his legs under him. So for that reason, I'm going to go with the under here. And again, like we talked about, that this Rams offense is going to face an above average pass defense throughout the season here. So I'm going to fade Puka Nacua under 85.5 receptions for this upcoming season, Chris.
Yeah, this makes a lot of sense. You laid it out perfectly. So I'll just reiterate those things and why they make sense to me. First of all, you got him injured, right? And you talked about that, not being it's not even necessarily like, even if he does come back and let's just say best case scenario, he's 95, 97%, you still don't gain any of those reps with your quarterback. And we've talked about, we've seen, if all you got to do is watch the wide receiver and you could see that, football is such a rhythm sport. These quarterbacks, they have reliable targets, and it's so crazy how in sync they have to be. So just turning that off just a tad bit could be there. If that's one, the I guess the anticipation of Cooper Kupp being a lot more healthier this season. That's two, taking away some of those targets as well from Puka Nacua. And you mentioned this, if I just wanted to mention this one really, really quickly. You said the Rams will play one of the most difficult pass defense schedules this season. Mm-hmm. According to the numbers, I forgot to mention this when I was talking about Karen Williams and why I like his touchdowns to go over. They actually projected to play the most difficult schedule of pass defenders this season, including 7 games against top 10 pass defenses. You start the season off with the Lions, then you got the San Francisco 49ers twice. You got Green Bay in here. You got, Max Crosby in that Raiders defense as well. So they play Philly. There's some really good Buffalo, the Jets. Some really good defenses that they have to go up against. So all of those things hopefully make us 3-0 on the Rams here this season, with all these player props that we like in this team.
Yeah, the Rams offensive line, it's slightly above league average. They're ranked number 13th there. But again, it's also the fact that they are going to be facing a very, very difficult pass defense schedule this upcoming season. So hopefully we can cash on those for sure. All right, Chris, before we continue the conversation here to get into our next set of player props for the season for the NFC West division here, let me tell everyone about our friends over at Rhythm. Football season is almost here, and college football and the NFL models are now live on Rhythm. Create your own winning betting model or let Rhythm do the heavy lifting for you. You can decide what stats matter most to you, and Rhythm builds a custom model around that, or just let Rhythm and its predictive model do the heavy lifting. Rhythm uses AI projections from MIT data scientists, and Rhythm already has you covered for NFL Week 1 and college football Week 0. Claim your 7-day free trial by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And we're also brought to you by, or want to let you guys know about the greatest sports handicapping contest in the world. That's right. Circa Survivor and Circa Millions is back. Circa Sports is giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Don't have a trip booked for Las Vegas yet? Before football season, Ultimate Contest Weekend is a great time to go and hang out with Ryan and Sean and enjoy some of the open bar events at the greatest sportsbook in the world, August 22nd through August 24th. Use promo code SGP15 to save 15% off on your hotel room for sign-up weekend. Sign up in person at Circus Sports between now and September 7th and use a proxy to play from anywhere. We even have a deal with a proxy. Go to proxy.footballcontest.com to save you $50 off their proxy service with promo code SGP. Again, proxy.footballcontest.com. Make sure you use that promo code SGP to save $50 off of their proxy services. All right, Chris, let's get into player prop number 3 for this division, my man. What do you got?
So now we head on over to Arizona, and this one shouldn't surprise anybody, but I'm looking at Marvin Harrison Jr., man, and I like this guy a lot. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. I haven't locked this in yet, but I'm interested to hear I wanted to hear your thoughts on it because I kind of like both. I see the touchdown sitting at 5.5. It is a tad bit juiced. -135 over on BetMGM was the best number that I saw. And I also see him sitting at 1,500 yards, and this number goes up to 1,075. So definitely shop around if you want to bet the over, or if you want to fade and go under. Make sure you're getting the best of the number either way. It's a couple of reasons why. It's a lot of reasons to like Marvin Harrison Jr. If you never heard of him and what he's done at Ohio State, then you probably just been living under a rock. Because I'm not a big college football guy, but even I know who Marvin Harrison Jr. is. Here's the cap though, I think, looking at this defense, the Arizona Cardinals defense is projected to play the NFL's most difficult schedule of offenses. So, this Cardinals defense is not great. They haven't spent a lot of money when you talk about locking up Kyler Murray and, the offensive side of the football. They have to go on the road to play the Buffalo Bills, the 49ers, the Packers, the Dolphins, all in the first 8 weeks of the season. I look at Kyler Murray's return, and after he came back, the Cardinals they were 5th in pass plays, in plays per drive, and they were 3rd in yards per drive as well as a top 10 in downset conversion rate. So they did a great job converting the football and points per drive as well. They did a great job of, being able to score the football when they got down to the end. Their tight end, Trey McBride, he actually led the team last year, with 81 catches and 825 yards. Now, we already talked about how, Kyler Murray didn't play, full season, and he only played those 8 games. But I went back and looked at it, because Kyler Murray hasn't been the Kyler Murray that we saw him be, first couple years of his career, quite a while now. But when I went back and looked at that 2020 season, and the reason why I looked at the 2020 season was because that was the season that him and DeAndre Hopkins played really, really well together. DeAndre Hopkins finished that season with 16 games played, 115 receptions, 160 targets. He went north of 1,400 yards and finished with 6 touchdowns. So if Kyler Murray, if he's anything that's a resemblance, and we expect him to be the second best wide receiver that Kyler Murray has played with, to start his young career, I think that he does go out and have a really, really good season. Kyler Murray, to put things in perspective as far as, comparing those numbers from DeAndre Hopkins and lining those up with Kyler Murray threw for north of 3,900 yards in 2020, and threw 26 touchdowns and only had 12 interceptions. I'm kind of expecting some of that magic. I do expect the Cardinals to be playing from behind. I do expect the Cardinals not to be able to stop anybody. They only projected to get 6.5 wins this season. So this is not a team that, by any stretch of the imagination, we expected to win the division, let alone even come in second in the division. So all of those things kind of, I think, at least line up and allow a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. to establish himself in the league. The last point I want to make, is just the readiness and the preparedness that we've seen from some of these wide receivers. Now, big shoes to fill when we're talking about comparing them to a guy like Justin Jefferson. But this is, a wide receiver, that is, could potentially be on that type of trajectory if we can get a Kyler Murray to stay healthy for the full season. So I really like Marvin Harrison Jr. I think that he can get 1,000, over 1,000 yards. And I also think that he can get the over 5.5 touchdowns just because of how much, how fast and explosive he is. He's also a great possession receiver. Also, it's not just stretching the field, but I do think that he ends up with 6 touchdowns, and I do think that he goes over. So I was kind of tied on which one I should pick. I haven't locked either in yet. I guess there's more, better value on the receiving yards going over 1,000 versus the minus 135 for him to get 6 touchdowns. But wanted to hear your thought process on both of those.
Look, but I was a huge fan of Marvin Harrison Jr. when he was at Ohio State, because I wanted the Texans to get him some way, somehow, and pair him with CJ Stroud, and they went out and got Stephon Diggs. But I'm just going back right now and looking at some of the wide receivers that the Arizona Cardinals have had over the past 5, 6, 7 seasons, and I'm still going back right now. I think the wide receiver post Larry Fitzgerald that had a 1,000 receiving yard year was DeAndre Hopkins, which I believe was that first year with the Arizona Cardinals. And that goes all the way back, I believe, to the 2019 season. So since that time, Chris, only one wide receiver has had 1,000 or more receiving yards for this offense, and that was DeAndre Hopkins. So what does that tell you? This is the reason why they went out and got Marvin Harrison Jr. to give a guy like Kyler Murray a reliable target. I couldn't talk you off of either one, but I think personally for me, it would be the yardage, because this is a guy that I think could get into 11, 12, 1,300 receiving yards. If you, again, obviously everything with health that we talk about here, but he's going to be a target machine. He's going to get the receptions. We know he's going to get the targets. He's going to rack up the yardage. And look, if you watch college ball, or if you don't, you know what this guy's capable of doing. And obviously, being with his Arizona Cardinals team, and like you mentioned, right, they play a very, very difficult schedule of opposing pass offenses. And what does that mean? That they're going to be trailing in games, that they're going to have to throw the football to stay in contention, or at least stay within the game. So I like Marvin Harrison. I couldn't talk you off of it, Chris. The over for his receiving yards. I think that if there's milestones available or ladders where you can maybe take it up to 12, 1,300, 1,400 yards, I think that's definitely a possibility for a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. They maybe sprinkle a little bit on his rookie of the year, offensive rookie of the year for Marvin Harrison Jr. I know, obviously, when we talked about the awards, that it is more of a quarterback award, but I mean, if he goes out there and sets records, I think he's definitely going to be in that conversation for offensive rookie of the year. So I say all that to agree, 100% agree with you. Again, he's going to be their schedule of or offensive that to play is going to be difficult. They'll be trailing a lot of these games, and then finally have a legitimate wide receiver number one threat. When prior to DeAndre Hopkins getting there, it was Larry Fitzgerald, D Hop. I know he's trying to get into the twilight years of his career, has fallen off a little bit. So now having a rookie quarterback, a wide receiver like Marvin Harrison Jr., son of a former Hall of Famer, I think that is only going to be a great, great thing for the Arizona Cardinals. So if I was a Cardinals fan, I would definitely be excited about the potential of what Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. can do together. So to answer your question, Chris, I couldn't talk you off of either one, but if you had a gun to my head and made me choose, I would go with the receiving yards for Marvin Harrison Jr. for sure. All right, I'll get into my last one here. And I'm going to go over to the San Francisco 49ers. I think that's the one team that we haven't talked about yet as far as player props. And you mentioned at the top of the show, we talked about it, that we still don't know where Brandon Ayuk is going to end up. We do believe it will be somewhere outside of San Francisco 49ers week one, whether it's with the Steelers that have been rumored, or whether it's the Patriots. I think they're out of the talks of it now. Browns are rumored there as well. So we do expect Brandon Ayuk to be on another team before week one gets there. What does that mean, right? So who does that open up the possibilities to? Is it Jawan Jennings? Is it more Deebo Samuel? Is it Christian McCaffrey? I think the beneficiary, and I took the receptions over, is for George Kittle. And there was a stretch, I think the first year when Brock Purdy took over as the quarterback 2 seasons ago, that there was just this type of connection and chemistry with George Kittle as far as the passing game went for the San Francisco 49ers team, right? And I think that George Kittle is going to be that guy, maybe getting more targets and more catches this year. Take a look at his career, Chris. 59.5 is the number for his receptions. He's gone over this number in every single season since 2018, except for the 2020 season where he only played in 8 games. And even in those 8 games, Chris, he had 48 receptions. 71 receptions in the 2021 season. He only played 14 games. 2020, he won by the hook. Played in 15 games, and then last year he played 16 games, had 65 receptions. So I think this is going to be the opportunity or a area of emphasis for George Kittle to be more involved in the passing game with Brandon Ayuk's departure potentially here. It's just a matter of when and not if for the San Francisco 49ers. So I think George Kittle, again, he's a fan favorite. He's been there for a while. I know he's not the greatest fantasy tight end anymore, but I still think that he can get the receptions for the San Francisco 49ers team. And I think that when you talk about Brock Purdy and the rapport and the chemistry that he has with his skill positions outside of Christian McCaffrey, of course, I think George Kittle is definitely at the top of the list for Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers. So George Kittle over 59.5 receptions as my final player prop here. Chris, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I absolutely love the number. Outside of watching the receiver, and it's hard not to be a George Kittle fan if you watch the receiver. I mean, this dude is amazing, not just on the field but off the field, and everything that he brings to the game of football, just his energy and all of those different things. Outside of all of that, if you're talking about, like you said, those receptions from a Brandon Ayuk, disappearing, and whoever comes in and steps up to fill his role will be a playmaker and be able to make some plays. But if we don't think that George Kittle can go out there and get and replicate what he did last season with 60 catches, or the season before, with 65 catches, or the season before that with 60 catches, in this style of offense, then you're just sadly mistaken. The way that he can manipulate defenses and find the soft spots, is kind of second to none. You get a guy that has done this plenty of times before. He's continuously just been able to kind of help the San Francisco offense do really, really well. So the only way I see this not cashing him off is barring some kind of injury. The other thing I'll mention just really, really quickly is if you're the defense, when you're game planning for San Francisco, I'm not sure how you don't say, you know what, we got to cut the head off the snake, which is Christian McCaffrey out that backfield, and we got to make Brock Purdy beat us, right? Yeah. I'm not sure how that's not the game plan. Now, granted, a lot easier said than done. I think we both would agree with that, with CMC being in the backfield. But if a team can, put that pressure on Brock Purdy in this offense to not be able to utilize Christian McCaffrey as much, or we've seen CMC, be set back with injuries in the past, knock on wood, hopefully it doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
All of those different things, just leads to him trusting a guy that has been, an elite skill position player for this team for such a long time. So love the George Kittle play as well, for over 59.5 receptions.
Yeah, and look, Christian McCaffrey, his first 3 years, he played in all 16 games, and there was times where, at least 2 seasons where he wasn't healthy, right? 3 games in 2020, 7 games in 2021. But also the fact that you don't want to burn out or overutilize Christian McCaffrey even early in the season, because if you do get to the playoffs, we talked about extensively last year on the Propcast that he's just an absolute monster and it's an absolute machine. So you want to keep him as healthy as possible and not really, put too much tread on the tire for a guy like Christian McCaffrey. And again, with the departure of Brandon Ayuk, I think this is a good opportunity for George Kittle to step up for this team as far as getting receptions. And it's not like something that he hasn't done in his career. I think that's something that he can continue doing for the San Francisco 49ers team. So, George Kittle over 59.5 receptions for the Niners. Chris, any honorable mentions, anything else you were looking at before we do get to best bet here?
No, I think I really wanted to go through the Seattle Seahawks just a little bit deeper. Like I said, I like the Geno under a lot. San Francisco, I'm not sure. I feel like their offense over exceeded last year, but not anything that I want to touch there. I will be locking in the Stafford under with you as well. And then on the Arizona side, man, I kind of feel like they will be playing from behind. So I was thinking maybe some running back unders, as far as, touchdowns or not even touchdown, maybe even yards. If we expect them to get down and to be playing from behind because we think that defense isn't going to be as good, then I kind of expect them not to be able to run the football as much. And, Kyler Murray to be out there showcasing his talents via his legs. and some of those deep balls to hopefully a Marvin Harrison Jr. So we can catch that over. So I kind of thought about maybe some unders for running backs for for Arizona, but nothing that I can't pulled the trigger on. How you feeling about honorable mentions?
Yeah, I think the one I was looking at was Kyler Murray rushing yards to go possibly over. I mean, we know that these scrambling quarterbacks, that's something that you can't take away from them, right? The Josh Allens of the world, the Lamar Jacksons, the Jalen Hurts of the world, those guys that like to scramble and rack the Justin Fields of the world. His number was around, I think, 475.5 or 450.5 for Kyler Murray. I know he hasn't done it over the past 3 seasons, but he also hasn't played a whole heck of a lot of games as well. So if he's able to stay healthy and play 15, 16 games, I think that's a number that he can definitely get over because, again, he is a guy that has that escapability and can utilize his legs to rack up some yards there. And, again, it's not a big number for a guy like Kyler Murray there. So that was one I was looking at. Other than that, I think that was pretty much it. I think that was pretty much it for me as far as the NFC was when that was the only one I was considering. I agree about the Geno Smith one. I couldn't find the number, but I'm glad that you found it. Just because again, he probably will be coming into this season with some type of injury, whether it is it was a knee injury and a hip injury that he's dealing with right now. Who knows if he even does play in the preseason for the Seattle Seahawks. All right, Chris, let's wrap it up here with best bets for this division. Of the ones that you gave out or the ones that you maybe haven't given out, where are you going with your best bet for this division?
So we'll go Marvin Harrison Jr. Like I said, outside of some kind of injury, I like Marvin Harrison Jr. And you talked me into the receiving yards a little bit more than the touchdowns, and it makes sense. It's less juice as well. So we'll go over 1,500 receiving yards from Marvin Harrison Jr. I think with the Cardinals projected to win 6.5 games, maybe they win a couple more. Maybe they make a late playoff push. I don't really expect them to do that well overall, just because of, as we mentioned, it's still Jonathan Gannon being there first year, only 1 year head coach. Same thing for the offensive coordinator. Same thing for the defensive coordinator. There has to be some chemistry that has to be built with this team as well. Getting Kyler Murray back acclimated. So I think the least we could do, is just a successful season for the Arizona Cardinals will be development, right? And Marvin Harrison Jr. is a guy that should help this team exponentially with that development, especially on the offensive side of the football. So I think I like Marvin Harrison Jr. over his 1,500 receiving yards a tad bit more than I like the other ones. As I mentioned, they play a very, very good set of offenses. Mm-hmm. So I do think that they're gonna have to get up and down the field and try to score and put up as many points as they possibly can. So I'll go Marvin Harrison Jr. over 1,500 receiving yards. Best
Love it. Yeah, definitely agree about that with Marvin Harrison Jr. for this upcoming season. All right, for my best bet, I'm gonna go with Matthew Stafford, man. Under 4,500 passing yards, like you mentioned there, even the better number you found for me there. So 100 more yards there for Matthew Stafford. And everything that we mentioned, right? We expect to see more of a bounce attack from this Los Angeles Rams team. You have Kyren Williams in the backfield. You also drafted Blake Corum for a reason. And again, Matthew Stafford is also getting up there in age, right? And I think that there is some type of, soreness or an injury or a knick-knack injury that's bothering him. I think they'll probably err on the side of caution with him and maybe give him a game or two off. And I think that could be the difference between getting to the window with his bet and not. They also do face, like we talked about, a difficult schedule as far as past defenses for this Rams team here. So, so Matthew Stafford under 4,500 passing yards as my best bet for the NFC West division to wrap up our second division for our season player props for the upcoming season. All right, Chris, that's going to do it, man. The West division's in the books. We'll be back next week to do our next division, so look out for us then. Chris, anything else you want to mention before we get out of here?
Now take us to the AFC North, where we'll be headed next week. I'm super excited for that show as well. For people who are catching this one for the first time, definitely go back and check out the AFC West, which we did on Tuesday earlier this week. And it's just an exciting time of the season. I'm really of the year. I'm just really excited for football season, man. And that's all I got. Always bet responsibly, whatever you're betting, and me and Munaf will catch you guys in the next one.
Yep. Make sure you guys follow Chris on Twitter. That's at ChrisBeCappinn with 2 P's and 2 N's. You can follow me there as well at SportsNerd824. More importantly, make sure you guys subscribe to the Propcast on the YouTube page. Just type in Propcast SGPN. You'll see our logo there. And do us a favor, subscribe on YouTube, because that's where we'll be going live for the NFL season. And again, if you haven't already left us in rating and review for the show, definitely do so for us for this show. All right, like Chris said, we'll be back next week for the AFC North, so look out for us then. And don't forget, we also did the awards markets, so plenty of time to listen to those before the season gets here. All right, good luck with your bets this weekend. Bet responsibly, like Chris says, and we'll talk to you guys next week. Enjoy the games.